Hey guys, it's filur, also known as 944. Don't forget Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, I'm here for another episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is going to be Fisker, who is a veteran Counter-Strike player and champion from CS 1.6. And as I actually was mentioning to him before we set this interview up, I did do a very similar interview to this after he was retired in early, I would say it was at the end of 1.6, just before I think CSGO came out. We did it actually when he worked at Inferno Online. I actually did it from Inferno Online. Just sadly, because at the time, that website that was hosted on was the SK Gaming website, which had its own video player. That's where the only place it was online, and that doesn't exist anymore. Basically, when they did a rebrand of the website, they just disconnected that video player. They don't care about it anymore. So it doesn't actually exist. It's probably on a CD-ROM somewhere that I've got in a desk somewhere. So I could look it up, but I thought, since that was 10 years ago anyway, I don't know people are looking it up that much anyway. I thought, why don't we just do another one? And since the series is Reflections, I'm sure if anything, you've gained more perspective on your career since then. So let's do another one, right?
Yeah, hopefully I have some new reflections over my career.
Sure.
We'll see and pick my brain a little bit.
So here's where I want to start, which is even though you're pretty old school, there still was a couple of years of CS and competition and people like HeatoN and Potti playing before you got to the top. So what I wanted to know was, when you first actually started playing competitively in CS, not just in public servers or something, were you aware of the esports side? Were you aware in Sweden of people like HeatoN and Potti when you were on your way up?
I think our first LAN event was Birdie LAN in 2002. We were, of course, aware of the top scene in Sweden, but not esports in general. It was a new beginning of something that nobody knew anything about. So it's been a fun ride to see how it developed over the years.
Because the funny thing is, from my perspective, even though as the years went on, I actually did know a lot about the scenes you're talking about, the rendezvous lands and the birdie lands, and the fact this was sort of the equivalent of what FPL is now in CS, where it's where you find the next talents, you see who's actually contest himself against the best. It's funny because the first time I remember hearing about you and the teammates you had was obviously the story that Al used to be in NIP and had won CPL and stuff. And then when they split that team apart and they made NIP into a different lineup with Scream and all those people, famously he went to play, but at the time, people said the story was that he's playing with his friends in Too Easy, which was the team you were in. And so at the time, I remember wondering, does that mean it's not going to be a top team or something? And obviously, I didn't recognize these names. These weren't the names that were with Vesslan and HeatoN and Potti and Execute and all these guys. So I remember thinking, what the hell? Because if you remember, the first event you did was that LAN Arena one where you guys went in France, even though it was sadly a disaster of an event. It was very badly run, right? But that was, you guys already broke out. You're in the finals. So at this time, were you already essentially, I know within the Swedish scene, there was only a couple of teams had the prize money, the sponsorship rather, to go to big events and stuff. Was it the case? Was this team already good when Al rejoined you guys? Were you already just about to go to the top again? What happened? How did this happen that he joins your team and suddenly you're pros essentially?
I mean, we were pretty much, I think we had 2 teams in our local town where we were living. And we weren't any top players, but all dragged us into gathers and stuff. So we had a feel of the scene and who were good and all that. But we were nagging all the time to join us and play with us because we were his friends. We were in the school at the same time.
Oh, wow, right.
Yeah, so all of us were the same age as well. And we followed his career. We were playing Quake before that, and he was pretty good in Quake as well.
Oh, wow, right.
Yeah, so he was picking up on games when they were new and becoming very good.
I heard, by the way, I forget who it was I interviewed who told me this. I heard also, so maybe it was actually Scream. I think he told me something like that. Actually, even though Al has a reputation, people think of him as the first support player and the guy around. He actually told me he thinks that Al's a natural skilled gamer as well. So would you agree? Is he someone where if he'd had the mentality he wanted to be HeatoN and Potti, be the superstar, could he have been the star player, you think?
Yeah, I think, as I said, he always picked up on games. We had local LANs all the time on the summers when we were small. And, every game we played, he would become, the best all the time. So he was picking up on stuff, a lot faster than the rest of us. So, we followed his career. We watched him play NIP X3, the classical finals. And, he was playing in top teams back then, Exism, Anti-Hero Clan, I think. I don't know if it was.
Yeah, these are the earliest teams that people don't know, the very early days of
clan-based times where, that's, I don't know if that exists anymore. But, we followed him all the time, and we watched him, and we were at his house watching the game. So we picked up on stuff, and after a while, he wanted to play with us. So that's basically how we joined. up together.
Since you played with him in this team, which is kind of like his team, but then also in SK, where, as I say, to me, that's where he kind of like pioneered being the supportive element of the guy who goes first or waits behind and throws the flag. What did that come from him? Was he the guy who wanted to do that style? Did people want him to do that? Because like I say, it's kind of cool because I feel like now it's understood. It's like the position of defender in hockey or football. So people know someone has to do it. But I feel like back then, he didn't have to do this role, right? I think a lot of Swedish teams were kind of a bit loose. What would you say to that aspect?
It wasn't any role that he like picked or wanted. It just fell naturally. Like he was steadfast in holding his positions. I mean, everybody knew where he was, but he always picked out two guys first. So he was pretty. His mechanics were pretty good back then, I think. But then on later stage, I don't think he followed the progress on how the game were played later on stage,
right?
More movement and all these things. So, but in the early stages, he was awesome, and I think from the player's perspective, we all loved him. I mean, we know what he was, but I don't think he got the credit that he deserved actually from the public, so to say. But
yes. I thought what I'd do is, because some of these players you played with later, I can ask about them. But I want to ask about a couple of the players that you didn't continue on much more. So actually the one who always gets lost, is forgotten from this team, is the player Logic. Because what people forget is, when he got his chance, he went to that team, Esports United, with vesslan, if you remember. And famously, they sort of did like not very well at some of the events. And he just straight up quit after that. That was it. He only had like sort of like a year or two in his whole career. So who was this guy? Because I remember actually, since I was friends with people like vesslan and Musa, who were in like that team, they were all telling me he was like the one that they were picking out. Like, this guy's going to be really good. He's going to be a top player. Who was he and what happened to him?
He was also one of our like childhood friends. He was he is still today best friends with Bronk.
Right.
So that's how they joined. But he was more of a like, he wanted to party on the weekends and go out and meet girls and all that. So we had to like, no, come on, play with us. We're going to this event and all that. So he was more focused on the IRL stuff than we were. We were like focused to play the game. We loved the game. We wanted to go to tournaments and win events and meet other people. So that's basically the reason why he quit. He had one foot outside like a couple of events before that, but we knew that was going to happen.
And then the other guy, even though he did continue on for this period with you, was obviously the guy who says similar names to yours, filur. This is the other guy that in my Scream interview, by the way, he was raving about him. He was saying like this is one of his favourite players to play with. Like he said he was like a really good teammate at setting people up and helping them and facilitating. Who was this guy? Because he's another person who didn't have a very long career, right?
Yeah, he was a little bit like all actually. Like a good, robust player that did all the mechanics and all the basic stuff good, and I don't know what I actually never talked to him after.
Right.
We were local friends, but not really like tight or anything. But I think he went on to do other stuff. He was playing a lot of Warcraft 3,
right,
with Scream. So I think he pursued that a little bit more, and I don't think he wanted to be in the like limelight of events and all that. I don't actually know why he quit, but he just quit, and we went on to SK. So that's where our focus were.
What would you say, as I just referenced, the first big event you got to go to, like, oh, I'm going to an international tournament after you've watched like Apex, is sadly it was this one LAN Arena 7, which if people don't know, was actually famously like a disaster. Like as far as I know, wasn't it stuff like the PCs were kind of fucked or something? I think there was something where people said like, I mean, it's a classic thing at French events. Like if you were French, you could just hear the commentators basically like telling you where people were. Can you give me some thoughts? What was it like on this? Because even though you got to the final, it sounds a bit scoffed, mate. What was it like?
I mean, those were like the early struggles for all of us. I mean, all the events, the tournament organizers, they didn't know anything about Counter-Strike or servers and all that. We had to like, with like the update rates and the command rates and rates were like standard.
Default,
so, yeah. But LAN Arena 7 was, I think that's what became ESWC.
I think something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, the basis of the event was very cool. It's like the stages that started. They have a stage with TV monitors, so it was a really cool event to go to. But yeah, it was horrible to play at because of the lag. And as I said, I mean, we had computers that dropped down to like 40, 50 FPS, and I mean, those were the early struggles with the tournaments overall. But it was a fun event overall. I mean, it was the first, as you said, the first big one, and we went on a party, on a club afterwards with all the players, and I mean, it was just we're like a sponge,
right?
Learning everything and meeting everybody, and yeah, that's where the start of the career began, I think.
Because one thing, yeah, go on.
We placed second on that event as well. So
Yeah.
we had this little internet hero talk about it. They didn't really trust us, that we were good on LAN and all that. So this was the first event where we went to like, okay, we need to show ourselves here. And we actually beat SK, which were HeatoN and Potti, and I don't know who the rest of the guys, maybe Bengan, Kush. It wasn't the top NIP lineup, but I mean, we still beat them. And that felt awesome for us at that time, because I mean, it was our first time going outside of Sweden to play an event.
One thing I did want to ask is, because as you say, after this result, people know like some of these players are legit, or like maybe they can be in the top teams, and later you were top teams. But what I wanted to ask was, after this event, famously, everyone went to America again for that CPL, and some of the people from your team, people like fucking Brunk and Arl and people like some of these got to play. They played in that Esports United like mixed team with Scream, etc. And they all went over there. You guys just sat at home. Like, were you invited to one of these teams? Were you just sat back waiting for your chance to go to big CPLs? What were you doing?
We went to CPL Oslo, I think.
Yeah, that was a little bit after. Yeah,
after. And CPL Oslo, and then I went to CPL Winter 02, I think, with Scream and all. And I don't remember how we. I mean, it was. Were
you guys just waiting to like get sponsorship or something? Is that the issue? You were trying to find a team or something?
Yeah, we're always looking out for it, but I mean, we weren't that big yet. So, but we got some sponsor from mTw. I think we had the local the internet cafe called Ice that sponsored us. So we got a little push, but we paid out of our own pocket as well for the most of the travel in the beginning. So it was hard struggle. But after after the Oslo event, we started like, okay, what are we gonna do now? Are we gonna? And I think HeatoN and Potti and BDS were dragging in us, me and all, a little bit to join them, because they made I don't know, they weren't even on the CPL Oslo event. I think they didn't have a team. No, exactly. So they were kind of not happy with the LAN Arena event, and they started searching for new players, and after that we joined up with them.
Well, actually, that connects perfectly to a story which you might want to forget, sadly, but I've got to ask it, which goes like this. The reason why I can tell you for a fact I definitely remember that they weren't at that CPL Oslo event is because that was the time, Fisker, where because World Cyber Games, I've already said the dreaded word, was becoming a big thing, they wanted to get rid of the Norwegians, remember? They wanted to get rid of Dark and Execute because they were going to get Swedes, because at the time, everyone knew WCG's becoming a big thing. Now, famously, that means they weren't at the 2002 WCG qualifier, Fisker, but unfortunately, your team was, vesslan's team was, and I can tell you, everyone at that event wants to just like, you know, Men in Black, they want to pull up that thing like and delete it from their brain, because famously, this was the one where it was won in a crazy upset by the team called A-Laget, which, if you don't know, by the way, guys, is so generic. They were never famous, and the name even just means a team, like a team. Like, it's not like they were never even famous. The only player who became famous was obviously Quick, who later on became a top player. I've even heard those guys themselves, Fisker, admit that they didn't think they were going to win the event, and it was a total fluke, and that they even told me something mad back in the day, like they just treated going to that World Cyber Games as like a party, and they knew they couldn't even win. Right, give me some thoughts, because if people don't know, at this event, it was a really stacked qualifier. Everyone except SK was there, but it was one of those ones where when you saw the bracket, you were like, right, once basically you'd won the game against, I guess, Vesslan's team or something, everyone was like, right, you basically won the World Cyber Games qualifier. Like, there's no way this random A-Laget team's going to win, right? But they just upset everyone and won the event. Can you give me some thoughts? Do you remember it?
I remember this. It was on Matrix.
Yes, Cafe,
had and I think the quarterfinals were like against Matrix.
Right.
They had a pretty good team, and the semis were against
whoever Vesslan's team was probably.
Vesslan's team, So we were like, okay, we have A-Laget in the finals. I mean, we beat two of the best teams here already. It's going to be a walk in the park. And it wasn't, unfortunately. But what can you do? You just need to reload and start playing again. I mean, but it was horrible for us. I mean, it set us back a lot because we thought we were going to win that easy.
Yes.
So it kind of sucked watching them be there, playing events. I mean, but that's how.
And I also always thought this, because if people don't know, back then only the winner of the qualifier went to the actual grand finals. Well, the other reason why it's brutal as well, Fisker, is because since obviously only one Swedish team could go, well, their team had no chance to win. If your team had gone, you might have actually won the World Cyber Games, bro. It would have been like plausible, right? Or at least get a medal, you know, at least get like one of the 3 medals, right?
Yeah, I think any of us, I mean, even Matrix and Vesslan's team won the World Cyber Games, so that sucked a little bit, but that's how it goes.
Sure.
You can't do much about it. It sucks.
So after
Reload,
this,
go again.
as you say, CPL Oslo was the next big one after this. And this is the one where you guys got to the final. And if people know, this was the first event that there was A-Laget, the team that Element made when he had his time when he was outside of Game Online. And you played them in the final. Now, what's funny is in history, because Element is one of the all-time great players and has an amazing resume and story, I know that every fan Fisker is going to think, well, that makes sense. You know, like, of course his team would win. But I want to point out something historically that people have to understand, which is if someone's in one of the top Swedish teams, listen, maybe the other best Swedish team's allowed to beat you. Some fucking Norwegians, no way. Like, you guys thought you should have won this event, right?
Of course we did, but I think they had a better team.
They had a pretty good team.
I mean, do you remember that he cheated as well on the gun round?
Oh, right, did he?
On the pistol round?
Okay, what did he do?
I mean, the rules in the beginning of Counter-Strike was like if some server disconnected or some computer froze on the first 3 rounds, you would replay all those rounds. And they were using, I think they were using like Windows ME or 98 or something like that, or 2000, I don't know. And if you Control-Delete, it would freeze the computer.
Oh, you think he did this on purpose to get out of the losing round?
He's never going to admit this, but he did that, okay? So there's a famous quote from him, I don't know if that's out there somewhere, but where he says, "My computer froze, the game is off."
I love the way he says it, like some sort of pharaoh or something. I love it.
And then they won the gun run after that, or the pistol run after that, and they won the game. So, but I mean, we were in the early stages, so you learned all the time how to navigate all these tournaments and how to play them. And he was ready ahead of himself, so he knew what to do.
Because one thing I wanted to ask you was, I know for the CPL Winter event after that, the one where you guys came fourth, again, to a normal fan, they might think fourth is pretty good. But it's like, if you're a team like you have to think you can win the event or be in the finals. And I remember that was the one where you guys took in Spawn, who was obviously already fucking amazing. Like, I heard when I interviewed Scream, he told me that, like, the reason that was, like, one of his last big events is he was already, like, losing a bit of motivation. Was there some sort of issue in this team? Like, do you think this team should have done better at that CPL? It looked like the lineup could have won. Like, there's a pretty fucking good lineup, mate.
I mean, I would say that every CPL event we went to, we went there to win. Even, I mean, with any team, we thought we could win every event. But yeah, as I said before, with Filur, he was playing a lot of Warcraft 3, and Scream was also playing a lot of Warcraft 3. We had to like drag him down to practice all the time. So, but he was skilled anyway, and that was the thing with him. He was thinking like, I don't need to practice. I mean, I'm already good, and he was. But I don't know if he would have played more or anything that would have changed the outcome, but I think we did a pretty good round. We weren't satisfied, but we lost to Game Online, I think, in the first round or second round. We
really low in the bracket. Yeah.
So we had to battle our way through the whole lower bracket all the way up to, and then we faced SK, I think, in the lower bracket semifinals.
I think so, yeah.
Also another game, sort of like A-Laget, where we think, okay, SK, we beat them online on practice all the time, and we know how they play. And but I think Bronk did a pretty solid game with AVP that game, and it kind of pushed us back, and we didn't know what to do. And yeah, we froze, basically.
By the way, that's an interesting thing I could ask you about. People always take for granted that, like, if someone's good at the game, they're going to be good. But, like, that's another thing that takes a while to get used to, right? Is the pressure of the matches and being at the event. And it's different from being online in your bedroom, right?
Yeah, really. And I mean, today they have like really good, the same tables and same chairs. I mean, that was also the struggle in the beginning. I mean, we had leaning tables. I mean, there were monitors with not 100 hertz. I mean, it was all these wonky things that you had to navigate. But you kind of got used to that as well after a while, to play on different settings and all that. We didn't have as much configuration as they have today with the mouse settings and keyboard and all that. I mean, it was basically a headphones, a mouse, and just fucking play. That was it. So,
by the way, and since you referenced, obviously the weird thing about Scream's career is he was a really talented player, and to me, it's like one of the most obvious ones where you just didn't play long enough. Like, if he'd have played like 5-6 years, like some of the other names, he could have had an amazing resume. What do you think of this player? Like, he must be one of the best you've played with, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's also one of those guys like all that he picks up a game fast. If he thinks it's fun, he will become awesome at it. I mean, every game he's played is top ranked. So it's just, he has a motivation issue, I would say. But I mean, I think he could play a lot more years, as you said. But I mean, if he were focusing more on Warcraft 3, and then World of Warcraft came, crashed a lot of Counter-Strike players' careers. So there were other things back then. I mean, all the games that were releasing were like awesome games, not like today where there's a bunch of shitty games that nobody plays.
What about you then? Were you someone who was like a grinder in CS? Were you like activated to try and be a pro and play a long time?
Sort of. I tried to, but on later stage, you kind of started out when you were youngest, and you got to know all the scene and all the players. And I mean, after a couple of years, they fell off, and soon you were the oldest one in the scene, and no friends left. So I don't know if it kind of ticked me off a little bit. I got bored. Later years, 07, I mean, you weren't practicing. I wasn't playing enough.
Right.
That showed pretty much. So it's the same thing there with motivation, but also kind of getting older. So I had to decide, like, am I going to pursue this and take a chance, or I need to start working now, because we don't have those salaries that they have today, or that you can like live off. So I had to make a decision, and I didn't think Counter-Strike was as fun anymore to play. So that's what made me like swimmer off, or whatever you say.
When they made this lineup for 2003 of SK Gaming, and it basically was 3 of you from Too Easy. It was you, Al, and Brunk, and then HeatoN and Potti stayed in SK, obviously. How did this lineup come about to be built? Like, was there some sort of a shuffle after CPL or something? Why these specific players, do you think?
I don't actually know the reason, but I mean, we had played. There was this famous IRC channel called Spawnfest, and those were the top gatherers then. So we were playing there a lot with HeatoN and Potti before that, and I don't know. There weren't much Swedish available players, I guess, that were on the rise, and they knew all already that what kind of player he was. So I think all put in a good word for me there, and we just jumped. Yeah, Brunk joined SK before us, didn't he?
I think you all joined at the same time, but it could be.
No, because on the CPL Winter event in 02, we had, it was me, All, Filur, Spawn, and Scream.
Oh, Brunk, you could be right. He might have been in their line.
Brunk
yes,
was
okay,
playing in
enough,
SK
then.
at that time, so he was also like, come over to us, because Scream would quit playing, and so it was like we didn't have a team left, or like any sponsors or anything. So it was kind of a natural choice to join SK, me and All there. And then we left Spawn and Filur outside of it. And I think Spawn joined Matrix and Filur stopped playing.
Yes. Was it a big deal to you to join a team with HeatoN and Potti? I mean, they're already won a lot at this point in time.
Of course. I mean, that was the team you were basically aiming for, to play with those guys, because they were winning all the time, and they were, I mean, they'd been there from the beginning, so, and been on the top. So yeah, set my sights on them.
Is it true if you join one of their teams that they actually, at least back in this era, I heard they were like ridiculous grinders, mate. Like they want everyone to just live in CS and just be practicing all the time. Is it true?
Yeah, at least HeatoN. I mean, I wanted to play 24/7 all the time. We would book like practices at 6 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m., and sometimes like 12 as well. But he wanted to go on like 2, 4, 6. Let's fucking go. We're like, okay, we need some sleep.
Sure.
But he was playing all the time, and it was fun to come to a team where everybody wanted to play all the time as well. So
yeah,
you didn't have to like motivate anyone to play, or so everybody had the same goals, and we were pumping. And I think that's what made us better than everyone else, because we played a lot more than everybody else.
Give me some thoughts on these two guys as players.
I mean, I actually remember the first time we played a practice game, and they were, after a couple of rounds, they were fighting as hell. They were screaming at each other, like, you're a fucking idiot, what the fuck are you doing? And we were like, holy shit, what's going on? And after like 30
especially because you're coming from like friends teams and stuff.
Yeah,
like
exactly. So it was always like, what the fuck? They were like arguing on some flash, some shit. And we were like, okay, this is how it's going to be? Like, you're just going to scream at each other? And then after 30 seconds, they're like, oh no, I love you.
Right.
Okay, this is the feeling here. So, but I mean, those two were, you could take in a lot from them and watch them how they play. I mean, HeatoN's amazing spray back then, and also his communication skills. I mean, he was always loud, and all the videos you see from him playing, I mean, he's screaming loudest in the and I love that type of play, and that when it felt like when we got the momentum and we started screaming, nothing could stop us. That was the nice part, to come to a team where everybody wanted the same thing.
I heard from people who played with Potti, they told me, I think HeatoN described it best. They said, like, in a 1v1, he is like a mind reader. Like, he just always knows where the other guy is. It's like, you just know he's going to win the clutch, right?
I mean, he was famous for winning the clutch rounds and playing awesome in the most important game.
Yes.
So that's, yeah, of course, his strengths was the clutch game, and he wasn't as good online. That made him kind of mad, but always on LAN, you knew where, I mean, if he was solo with 3 enemies, you were like, yeah, he's gonna take this. It's fine. So yeah, he was a really clutch player overall.
One of your first tournaments you got to win was that CPL Cannes event in France, right? And it has associated with it. I thought, because listen, people don't know Fisker. He's probably one of the more sort of outgoing Swedish guys who always had a good sense of humour. I actually think that story of that tournament has one of the funniest anecdotes ever. You'll know it when I tell you it. So in the final, you guys were playing Vesslan's team, which at the time was like I think they were still called Esports United or some, or Team 9 themselves or something, right? And at the time, if people don't know, Vesslan's also super old school, and obviously he was briefly in NIP when they won that CPL. But at the time, it was always actually in the Swedish scene, sort of a rivalry. Whatever team Vesslan's in, because he's trying to do like a mastermind thing. And then HeatoN and Potti teams are almost sort of like, who cares about that shit? Just play the game, mate. We'll kill you anyway. So there was always this crazy rivalry, right? And so cause Vesslan, one thing he actually sort of understood was that when you're a leader, it's almost a bit like a movie. You want to do that speech to your guys before you go into war, don't you? Like, men, look around yourselves. Spartans, we are going to... So he tried to do a speech like this. You remember the story?
Yeah,
and he famously said in Swedish, I can't speak Swedish, but he said in Swedish basically like, we're the best in the world and we're gonna make history. And sadly in this final, he did make history, but he made history by losing 0-13 and getting no 0-12 or something, right? Didn't he like get no kills or something as well? Something mad like that. By the way, for a final, this is also mad because you expect the final to be a really great game, don't you? Really back up. Can you tell me about this story? Do you remember him saying that? Do you remember them getting wrecked?
I remember it was there was a crew always going to these events, making videos with clips from the event. I don't remember their names, but it was on English, and he said, "We're gonna change history."
Right.
That's what he said. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's some. I think it was Bullen who made a clip of that where he's like, yeah, you can see the scoreboard, and he like. The death counter goes up,
right?
And,
okay.
And he ended up with 0-12 as I think it was he CT as well? No, I think it was.
No, I think it was T-side and Nuke.
Yeah.
It was a pretty hard one, to be fair.
I don't remember what the final score was, though. Was it like 13?
I think you did just wreck them completely. Yeah, I think it was a pretty easy game.
So, but they were our biggest rivals in Sweden back then. But I mean, Nuke was also our absolutely strongest map. I mean, we wanted to play Nuke all the time, and we played it all the time. So we were kind of locking that map down.
By the way, even though this is like CPL Europe wasn't as big as like CPL America and the World Championships, at the same time, to win a trophy is a big deal, right? It's the start of what you hopefully wanted for your career at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, the CPL is a CPL, but that was the first year where they started to go like global, I think, with the Europe events, and I think they wanted to expand it. Didn't they have like a China event as well sometime? I don't remember, but I think they wanted to go to Asia as well. But I mean, a CPL is a CPL. All the good teams were there. I think not 3D wasn't there. I think
no, there's no Americans.
All the European top teams were there, and I mean, Europe was basically had the best teams. I mean, it was 3D. I don't know if it was maybe Zex or something like that, but they didn't have a lot of good teams. I mean, we were kind of spoiled in Europe with the good internet connection all the time, and LAN. I mean, in US, if you're on the East Coast, the West Coast back in the day, you had like 400 ping, so they couldn't practice on these LAN stuff that we could. So that was a little advantage for us.
Right, one thing people might forget is there's a story that goes, like, this team was pretty good, obviously won the CPL, but because, like, and this is how ruthless people like HeatoN and Potti are, because afterwards you had that Clikarena event, which is kind of like the LAN Arena, when it had issues on the way it was set up, and it was kind of a clown, the way it was running. You guys came third. I remember for the summer, you guys made that blockbuster move where obviously, like, you got fucking Element joined this team. He came over and he was, like, joining, and people remember there was this weird story where he joined just before ESWC, so he, like, didn't practice, I think it was train or whatever, and famously that's the map that like Zex upset you guys on. So even though after this SK basically, I mean, almost never lost a game, just won everything the rest of the year, this was a famous upset because you were at this big event. At the time, North Americans didn't really come to Europe like we're saying, and the guys, and even though it was a BO1 and like not the right map, what would you say about this? Was it a shock to you to lose in that kind of circumstance? Was it a big scale? Like we're saying, it sounds to me like HeatoN and Potti aren't the guys who go, oh well, we'll get him next time. They're the guys like, what the fuck, why did we lose this game? Like they're pretty hardcore, right?
They're pretty hardcore, yes. So no, we were very disappointed with that match on Train. I mean, Train wasn't one of our strongest maps, and I mean, Sunman's fucking Deagle
true.
destroy,
Yes.
yeah, that will never go away. So I mean,
Right, still in your head.
yeah, it was. They had a Deagle echo and they
Yes.
fucked us over. So I mean, what can you do? I mean, as you said, best of one, it sucked. I mean, also one of the early struggles where you had like not best of three and all that. So you had to be good at every game.
Yes.
I don't know where they placed after that, but I think it was Adrenaline who won the.
Yeah, it's Vesslan's team. Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, you kind of had to sit there and watch the games afterwards. It sucked, but yeah. I mean, after every event, we reevaluated and started looking for other members, or if we had to change the lineup in any way, or it wasn't like that 03 team. We weren't much of a tactical team at all. I mean, we didn't go deep into tactics and all that like we did in the 05 team. But I mean, what can you do there? You can't do anything. You're just mad at that time. But we had a pretty good run before it, and I mean, Clikarena as well was a I don't think they even paid out the money.
As far as I know, no one got anything.
I mean,
yeah.
So and there was a lot of delays. I remember it was like 12-hour delay the first day and all that. So we like in the semifinals or quarters and all that, it was like played on the night. I think.
Yes,
like,
I think it was played like 2 in the morning or something mental. Yeah.
So and that kind of broke us down a bit. I mean, we didn't see that event as a big tournament anyway after that. So.
What was it like to have Element join your team? Like, I've always thought, for me, Element, and maybe Dark as well, because he was there, and Executor, these guys who are Norwegians who get to join Swedish teams, I don't think people know, even though obviously you can speak Swedish. Swedes are pretty arrogant. Like, if they think Swedes are the best, they're not going to bloody bring in a foreigner. Like, to bring him in, was this his implication? Like, did people in this team think he was super good or something? I know he famously had, like, a great reputation. It's like he's great at reading the game and stuff. What did you think of getting to play with him? He was your captain, right? He was the in-game leader, right?
Yes, it was the in-game, man. That was the sole purpose for bringing him in. I mean, he was a good player as well, but he was a very good tactician and reading the game, and that was the part that we lacked, because all of us were good aimers and players, but we lacked some tactics to what to do in specific situations. And he would like be he was a bit like Snydan, very good at making changes like in the round, not beforehand.
Yes, mid-round.
So so that was his strengths, I believe. And I mean, it was amazing to play with. He was also like kind of like Logic, like to party a lot. And we were joking about, like, when you go to an event with him, he hangs with all the other teams and all the other players, not your own teams.
True.
Because he was a very social guy, so he liked to hang around everybody. But it was all fun. But he was a good guy. He was a funny guy to play with as well.
Since this is the team that you yourself got really famous in because it won so much and had so many championships and all the prize money, etc., I want to actually ask, who were you as a player at this time? Like, I can remember you were like certain things you were famous for. Like, you had a lot of like movement skills, for example. In this team, because there wasn't actually like a traditional designated primary AWP, you would even AWP sometimes. Who were you as a player, do you think, in this team?
I think I was more of an AWPer in the early stages of the game, and also the movement and all that. So I was probably mainly brought in as a sniper. Element was also good with the sniper rifle, but I mean, both HeatoN and Potti, they never wanted to play with the snipers. All didn't. I don't think he had a zoom button.
I doubt he ever used an AWP in his life. Yeah, exactly.
No. But actually, always when he picked up one on practice game, he was hitting all his shots. We're like, can you fucking play with this, please? No. So Spawn would like in the end of a round, he like pick up AVP, and then okay, he was dropped. No, I don't want it in the beginning. You play with it. You play with it. But he never wanted to play with it, and I was kind of the sniper. I like to play with the AWP in the early stages before it got nerfed a lot. I mean, they put the slow on it, the zoom was slower and all that. So kind of I worked it into my movement. I always liked the playstyle like Kenny S and those players that play pretty aggressively in pretty close quarters. I like that play style of AWP, but I mean, I can't do it anymore or today. So
when you guys went to America and you won this CPL Summer event, this was the one where you won without dropping a single map. And when I go back and look, there was the odd game that was close, but actually in general, you guys pretty much just run through this whole tournament. Like, did you already know you were going to win this tournament? What's it like to win? At the time, that was essentially like the majors, right? It was kind of like the World Championship to win that event.
Pretty much. I mean, we had practice. I mean, online, we would actually get beat a lot before most of the tournaments, and we were talking about this all the time. But I mean, after a couple of games in, we were like feeling it. I mean, we're not gonna lose anything here. I mean, just keep the momentum going and do our game. And I mean, people hadn't really started reading opponents yet, like watching demos and all that. I think that was the Eolithic team that started doing that and making anti-strats and stuff like that. So, but no, we felt pretty confident on that summer event. I don't even remember how close the games were, but I don't think any game. Maybe the game versus 3D.
Yeah, the upper bracket one against 3D was like 13-10, but that was about it. Aside from that, you were wrecking people pretty much.
Yeah, there wasn't any other team that we were like afraid of or like felt that they could beat us. We were at the prime at that time.
You said it yourself, like even though people are going to it's going to make them think it too simplistic a game. I agree, there wasn't loads of tactics back then, but the reason why your team didn't need as much is it was like the super team, like everyone was just fragging the fuck out of everyone, right? Like everyone's a good aimer.
Yes, and also HeatoN had very, very good hearing. There was, I don't know if people know about this, I mean some of the old schoolers do, but there was a faint sound when you switched grenades from HE to flash.
Okay.
And he could hear this from
Holy shit, okay.
A site to stairs.
So he knew when the attack was coming.
I mean, he would call weapon switch stairs. So we
right.
Okay, we're ready.
Right.
3 HEs.
That's OP as fuck, yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
So we used that a lot, and I don't think many other teams.
No, I haven't heard of that before. I mean, I will say I agree. And one thing that was amazing about 1.6, it's actually better even than other games, is the sound quality is incredible. You can hear a footstep across the map. I wasn't aware of that, though. That sounds amazing. That's like some hidden tech.
I think it was you had to switch like from between grenades, I think.
Right.
From HE to flash. And maybe you even had to bind it to the scroll to make it sound.
Right.
Because we went, I think it was like that. So he could hear, like on Dust 2, he could hear noises everywhere. So we used his sound a lot as well to like figure out where opponents were.
Because I always thought the best example that showed this wasn't about like traditional things in Counter-Strike, like all the intricate tactics and flashes, is like, think about it, right? Your in-game leader was Element. Well, obviously, because he's Norwegian, you couldn't use him for World Cyber Games. So you guys just added Spawn, another Mega Aimer, and still won the event without losing at all. Still wrecked everyone. Like, this kind of shows this team, it must have felt unbeatable to be in this team, right?
Yes, it felt like that. I mean, we had Bronk on the CPL Summer event as well as a 6th player. We probably could have won with him as well. I mean, it felt like we could play with anyone here. I mean, we had Element, Spawn, they're pretty good players. So, but it was that feeling we had that we could beat anyone. It doesn't matter where we play or how we play.
By the way, was Spawn, like, in his own way, unique talent? Were there other people as good as him? What did you think of Spawn?
I mean, you have to build a team around 4 people when you have Spawn in your team because you can't control that guy. You send him off to a bomb site and he picks 3 guys.
Okay.
So, but I mean, I had most of the fun playing with him. We had a lot of duels and aim maps and KC maps. I mean, we played a lot of custom games and all that. We had a lot of fun. And he's an amazing guy to have in your team because he's like me, a jokester, pranking all the time and making fun of everything. And also he's awesome at Counter-Strike.
Because the sad thing is here, obviously, you're one of those people. I often make this distinction in interviews. You know, there's some people in their career, they only won 1 or 2 championships. So if I do the interview, like, that's going to be like half an hour just about the one championship. It's going to be every match. You're one of those people who's won so many championships, we're having to, like, skip through them. And then you won a couple of other events. Like, you won CPL Copenhagen and CPL. If people don't know, what I would say is this, because obviously we can't go all of them individual. What I'll say is this. I remember at the time, when I first came to work with BDS, I was doing some research for an old article, like, who were the greatest teamers of all time. And BDS said, you know, our SK team that was that one in 2003. He said, if you ever look it up, I think we had a stretch, I confirmed this. There was a stretch where you won something mad, like 41 games in a row, something mad. Like, you know, all these events we're talking about, by the way, you win them all without losing a map. CPL Summer, World Cyber Games, CPL Oslo, CPL Winter, like all these events, no one's even getting a map off the team. Like, this is kind of crazy, because even with all the great teams, NIP and 3D and all the... Everyone loses, you know. I mean, and sometimes, like, World Cyber is the best of 3. You can lose a map there, even it can be 2-1, can't it? Like, is there something extra special about this team that made it so good? Is it the best team you've ever played in?
I would say it's the most skilled team I played in. As I said before, we didn't have any tactics or anything like that. We just go with we had like 3-4 rounds on each map and like a standard setup, but we would like, where anyone kills anyone, we go there. So, I mean, of course, most awesome lineup I've played in, skill-wise, but I would say the 05 lineup was more of a tactical team than that. So.
Because one thing I will just emphasize here is this year, because of how many competitions you won, if people don't know, that record for how much prize money was what took something mad like 7 years or something, bro, before anyone beat it. Like, it took a long time. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is this. There's one detail about Element who we talked about. People might wonder, that's weird. He was a bit hostile about Element there. He played him, but then he was teammates and they won also. Here's the question I have, and I'm sure everyone inside your team must have the same question, Fisker. If I've just won everything, I'm winning all these, we're never even losing a map, bro, it's too easy. I wouldn't fucking leave the team. And not only that, he left the team to head away the team you just beaten. Like, weren't you just sort of like, what the fuck, bro? Can't we just keep winning? Like, just stay there. That must blow your mind when that news comes through that he's just leaving. What? There's no reason to.
No, I thought so as well. Right. I mean, what can you say? Element is a social guy. He wanted to play with different teams, and I mean, I think he wanted to play with the Norwegian guys.
I think so. Yes.
I don't know. He went to He loved the US.
That's true.
Overall, so I think, you know, he was wasn't that like a practice team for Adrenaline first?
Initially, yeah. But just morphed into a real team. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I don't know actually why he left. I don't remember the reasoning behind it or anything actually. But yeah.
No, but you know what I mean? Because to me, the worst thing about that is not only did he leave, but it means we'll never know when this team would have stopped winning. Like, remember, this team was never stopped by anyone else. No one beat you and stopped you. Like, he just left and he had to start over again. Like, it's just so wild, isn't it?
Yeah, you should ask him. I have no idea.
True.
Why. We had a good run, but he put a stop to that there.
Because after this, if people remember, that was when SK, obviously, look, the good news was she still had Spawn and all these people. She still had like a mega lineup of players. But people will remember after this, it took a while, basically not till towards the end of the year, that the team got everything back together again. This is when results were up and down the next year. And you had like that ESWC where the bloody Russians upset you guys this time. And you had the World Cyber Games where Moto did that like bullshit where he's behind that box. Like, but anyway, give me some thoughts on, like, first of all, that one losing at ESWC, that must be crazy. Because at the time, no one knew Russian teams. I mean, Eastern European teams weren't relevant. It was all like Nordic and America, maybe like a bit of Germany or something, you know. But the idea like a Russian team would beat you in a stage match, there's no way. It's inconceivable, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we have been good 03, all the odd numbered years we have.
Right, yes, true.
Even numbered years. But I mean, for the Russians there, they even came to us after, like, we're sorry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, oh my
you don't want to hear that,
yeah,
I know.
I remember I smashed my keyboard on stage. That it was like, yeah. I mean, and ESWC was the event that we really wanted to win.
Sure.
We had the LAN Arena event.
Yes.
And, yeah. But it sucked. That whole year sucked big time. I mean, we never got back to where we were. I mean, we were kind of like, it was maybe that ego that made us like think that we were the best all the time. But I mean, people had started catching up to us. And as I said before, the Olympic guys, the Norwegian guys, they were more of like looking at videos and making anti-strats. I remember I think Bronk told me this, that they were practicing against. They were starting out as a practicing team towards Adrenaline in US, and they were practicing a lot. They were playing on Nuke, and Adrenaline had this tactic, like they would be outside as terrorists on Nuke, spraying the roof and all that for like 1 minute, and then they would walk in. Yeah, what do you think happened? And they actually they faced them on Nuke in
Oh yeah, they beat them.
that
Yeah,
CPL.
true.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think if you find a demo or anything, watch the first weapon round. What happens when they walk into the T lobby? There's 5 HE grenades
Right.
running right
Okay.
into them. They're on 1 HP. So that was like the first time when people started anti-stratting
Right.
other teams and all that, and we had never thought about those kind of things. I remember MIBR did another thing on me and on the B. I was often on the B platform on Dust 2 with Op, and they would one or less throw in 4 smokes, and they would have checked like where the angle was where I was standing. It would like
Right.
tap into me. I was like, it took like 3 rounds for me. What the fuck are they
Right.
taking a chance every time, or what is going on? And then we started to figure out, okay, people are like going into this more and starting to look at videos and demos and watching where people stand. So we tried to mix it up some with changing positions and all that, but we never really got back to our groove that year. And yeah, I mean, after a couple of, I mean, it wasn't that bad. We weren't just winning the event. So, I mean, we placed second, but I mean, we wanted to win all the time. So we started looking at lineup changes and all that, and weren't satisfied with the stuff in SK and all that shit. So that's how it went, I guess.
What about, just give me some thoughts on that CPL, the summer one, that one where you guys lost to Eyeball. It's like, look, it's still a good result. You make the finals, like you were in a position to potentially win. Obviously, later you played with Vilden. So I wonder, like, what did you think of that one? Like, was it actually, like, logical? Were they actually good at the time? Did it seem like they could have been the ones to take you down?
Yeah, they were on the rise. Also, Vilden was also like one of those tactical guys. He was watching demos and on all that stuff. So, I mean, they were a good rising team at that time. But I mean, that whole tournament, we were on life support. I mean, every game felt like wonky. We didn't have that
Right.
momentum and feeling that we used to have. So we were kind of surprised that we actually came to the finals that event, because yeah, we didn't think we deserved it then, because we weren't playing good at all. But we managed to take us to the finals at least. And I mean, as I said, I mean, placing second shouldn't be such a bad result or feeling, but to us it was, because we were aiming for the top all the time.
Yes. Right, one thing I want to ask is, it's along the lines of what you said about the shit you referenced, but I've got a good question for it. So, which is, after this, the beauty of being in a team with HeatoN and Potti, though, is even though you guys just lost to Eyeballers, well, obviously their best player was Hyper, right? Well, the good thing about a HeatoN and Potti team is they are the greatest ever at what I call Game of Thrones. Like, the joke is, they either beat you, in which case they beat you, or if you beat them, they'll just take your best player. Like, they're the best ever at, you know, they must, like, you know, in the modern day, like, sliding into the DMs, they must have just been the greatest of all time on IRC and talking so much. So, obviously, he came and joined you guys. And if you remember, you guys won towards the end of the year that Nolellva team, that tournament, which had all the top Nordic teams. Like, it was such a pretty good event. And then famously what happened was, because you guys' contracts were going to run out at the end of the year, instead of sending you to CPL Winter, SK Gaming, who, by the way, could have won this event. Like, this is the one that NOA won, and they played Eyeballs in the final. Obviously, at the time, as like a tactic, because you guys hadn't signed the contract, they said, like, we're going to send our German team, who at the time, like, you have to realize, this is 2004, the German teams were irrelevant at that point. Like, let's see mouse sports. No one gives. So, like, that's the reason that's bullshit is, one, they know that team isn't going to win the event. It's not like they're saying, oh, hey, they're both equally good. They really just did that because what they were sort of saying was, we're not going to let you go, win CPL, and then leave and go to another org or break your contract. So, like I say, because you just won an event before, like, that's the worst part, right? It kind of feels like we could have won that event and we just weren't allowed to play by our org. It's kind of fucked up, right?
Yes, it was exactly as you said. I mean, our contracts were running out and we wanted more, and they wanted us to get less. So, I mean, they didn't send us. We were mad, but what can we do? We just let the contracts run out, and then we had some other options. I don't know. It wasn't anything that they could match, like our salaries and all that. But I mean, SK was the best organization back then. I mean, they had all the best Warcraft 3 players. I mean, the Unreal Tournament. They had all the top players in Quake 3. So it felt sad, but I mean, that's kind of the game of sports as well. I mean,
yes,
if you can't beat them, bring them over to your team. That's how it works.
Because along these lines, though, there's now a perfect moment for me to ask you a question. You're literally the best person I could ask this of, Fisker, which is after this, people might remember, this is where NIP, the org, came back, right? And when it came back, they made what on paper was the ultimate super team, because they got basically some of the players from this team. You were technically listed. You're one of them. You just didn't get to play, which is what I'm going to ask about in a second. But the rest of it, they basically took, like, Vilden came over, so they had Hyper already. They already had HeatoN, Potti, all the rest of it. And you made this, like, 6-man lineup that on paper looks like the craziest super team ever. This is like every CPL winner for the last like 2 years or something at this point in time. And famously, this lineup not only failed, like it did really badly, even lost to like the famous example I always give, bro, is when they went to one of those lands. I forget which Swedish land. They went to one land where they lost to Gorzi, the fucking demo admin, and his friends, which is like, bro, this is like the greatest super team ever in their primes. You've just lost to the demo admin. He's not even like a famous player. So, like, but as I said, you weren't playing in this team for some weird reason. You got to join, but then they just permanent benched you or something. This must have pissed you off, right? Why would they bring you into the team to not play you? What was going on?
I mean, we did a pretty bad year, and I wasn't playing at the top of my game at that time. So they gave me like a chance, like play good now, and we're gonna play with a 6-man lineup. But I mean, I knew that wasn't gonna work, but I still did my stuff, and I actually played pretty good on the end. But they chose to go another way and go with Vilden. And I mean, as you said, everybody thought, okay, this is the dream team. They're gonna have a great year now, and I mean, basically everyone thought that. And then they choked on first that against Gosi's mixed team or whatever, and then I think they went to Spain or something, and I don't even know if they got out of the group stage. So I mean, sometimes it doesn't work out with just having 5 good players. You need to have a good mix. That's basically what happened. I don't know.
One thing about this lineup, though, is even though obviously famously the split happened, so HeatoN and Potti stayed. I mean, Potti only played 1 more year at this point in time. He stayed, and then famously you guys went back to SK and got spawned and made like a different lineup. One thing I would ask is, though, the one man who got dropped between the cracks was Hyper. And at the time, he had been, like, the last year, I wasn't surprised SK picked him. He looked fucking amazing, but he looked like a really sealed. But I know after this, did he lose motivation? He just stopped playing pretty much, right? Didn't he? Didn't he just kind of fade out the scene?
I'm going to say one thing. World
He's another one.
Warcraft.
Right, okay.
MMORPGs. World of Warcraft.
Pretty rough, innit? I know, true.
Yeah, he was. I think he lost interest as well in Counter-Strike. I mean, he wanted to play World of Warcraft back then, and yeah, after he quit right after that, and I played on the same server as him, so I knew where he was all time. So, and I think he arrived home and was online like in 2 or 3 hours or something.
Right.
Like that. So, I mean, he lost interest in the game. I think. That's I don't know anymore. I haven't talked to him after that actually.
Right.
So more than change a couple of words.
Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Scrominati, who, in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Cher, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Hadju, Matt Pugnaccio Rakula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Gore, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it. Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are. Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Scluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.